Hi, my name is Kelsey, and I'm going to be talking about Titus Andronicus as a revenge tragedy. Now, Titus Andronicus was actually the first tragedy that William Shakespeare wrote in the 1590s when he was about 23, and it can't be classified as a true history like Richard III because Titus wasn't actually a real person. But it also can't be classified as a real tragedy like Macbeth, which brings us to a new genre called the revenge tragedy, which is more comparable to a modern day horror film. Now, Titus is considered a revenge tragedy, which is a genre that was made popular in the 16th century by John Webster and Thomas Kyd. And Kyd is known for writing The Spanish Tragedy, which is a novel all about revenge, murder, bloody events, and this gore expresses itself in a multitude of rapes, mutilations, human sacrifice, murder, live burial, and cannibalism. In Act 1, Scene 1, Titus says, "Religiously they ask a sacrifice. To this your son is marked, and die he must, to appease their groaning shadows that are gone." So in Scene 1, they're already sacrificing a guy. And 5 people actually fainted when this was performed at the Globe. So let's go over our revenge tragedy checklist. There is a secret murder. The hero wants revenge. There's plotting, disguises, and intrigue, madness, real or feigned, with Titus, a rising body count, and a major bloodbath. So the only thing that's not on the checklist is that there isn't a ghost, but Titus and Tamora are always going back and forth at each other, just like a Jacobean revenge tragedy. Now, a Jacobean tragedy were theatrical works created during the reign of James I from about 1603 to 1625 in England, and they evolved out of these Elizabethan dramas, known for their spectacular and bizarre, and most of them were influenced by Machiavelli's The Prince and Roman playwright Seneca's works, which were being translated into English at the time. And the Senecan model presents the story of bloody revenge with murder or rape of a person whose relative then vows by sacred oath to revenge the atrocity. And these tragedies were filled with horrifying events like cannibalism, incest, rape, and violent death. Titus says, "Then which ways shall I find revenger's cave? For those 2 heads do seem to speak to me, and threat me, I shall never come to bliss, till all these mischiefs be returned again, even in their throats that hath committed them." So the murder of his sons, and then when Lavinia reveals the perpetrators of her rape, fuels Titus to take revenge in whatever way possible. So this leads us to a different question, which is, did Shakespeare actually write this play? Sometimes this play can be criticized as immature and unsubtle, and some Victorian critics are known for saying that the play wasn't even written by him. The controversy goes on even though the play's in the first folio, and Meres publicly named Shakespeare as the author, and Meres wrote the Pilatus Tamia, which is a 1598 book and is the first critical account of the poems and early plays of William Shakespeare. In 1687, Edward Ravenscroft adapted the play, and in an introduction to this more refined version, he wrote, "I have been told by some anciently conversant with the stage that it was not originally his," meaning Shakespeare's, "but brought by a private author to be acted, and he only gave some master touches to 1 or 2 of the principal parts of characters. This I am apt to believe, because 'tis the most incorrect and indigested piece in all his works. It seems rather a heap of rubbish than a structure." So these scholars want to rescue Shakespeare's good name because many people believe that this is his worst play. And the scholars that do say that Shakespeare wrote it blame his youth for the poor quality of the play, since he was probably in his early 20s at the time, and it would have been his first tragedy. And in later shows, the killing's done a lot later because the first few acts are done to build the characters, but in Titus, they just start killing people right away. And you can see this when you look at Aaron. He's a much more two-dimensional villain. There's no time for him to be built up. With Titus and Tamora, you can understand where they're coming from. They're avenging their children, their people, and their loved ones. But in Act 2, Scene 3, Aaron says, "Vengeance is in my heart, death in my hand, blood and revenge are hammering in my head." So this is clearly a valuable predecessor to the grand tragedies written in the second half of his career, and in the time it was massively popular. You can see themes that Shakespeare later explored, and they're mirrored in Titus, like revenge, primogeniture, marriage. You can see Lady Macbeth mirrored in parts of Tamora, and King Lear in parts of Titus. So it's clearly a good building block for Shakespeare's later career, even though many people doubt that he actually wrote it. So I leave you with 2 questions. Do the characters in Titus Andronicus seal their own fates by relentlessly pursuing revenge? And do you think that Shakespeare really wrote this play?